Well, hey there guys, and welcome back. On this week's show, it's part 4 of our road grader build. Well, this build has been going rather well for me anyway, and I hope you guys are enjoying the content and enjoying following along at home if you manage to get yourself a set of these plans. But there's a lot to cover. There's a lot to do today, so let's head over to the bench and see what today has in store for us. Well, I've added a couple more laser embellishments to the model. Now, of course, this is all 100% optional, but I've been having fun with it. I'm liking what it's adding to the model. So one, of course, are these stripes across the boom along with the cat symbol on both sides. And as well on the hydraulic hose cover here, I have added a warning about the hydraulics, etc. Now it is so tiny. I mean, this is a tiny laser engraving. I haven't put it under magnification to see if I can read it, but it's there more to symbolize the warning label more than it is for me to actually have it legible. So I'm happy with the way it looks. I'm not too concerned if it's perfectly legible or not, but I really like what it's added to the model. Well, at some point in time fairly soon, I'd like to start getting the blade assembly here put together to go along with our front end steering assembly here. But we still need a few more parts. We have quite a few of them made, but we still need some more. So I think what I'm going to work on now will be the cylinder holders and the cylinder ends. We'll get all of our cylinders made up for this so that we can get this put together. So we're going to start off with the cylinder holder, and I'll show you the easiest way I found to make these. Well, in order to start making the cylinder holders, I have cut some 1/2 inch by 1/2 inch stock, and I have actually cut it longer than what I need. This is 7/8. We only need 11/16 according to the plans. So the very first thing is I've marked the center, and in the bottom here, I have drilled a 3/16 diameter hole, 3/16 of an inch deep. The easiest way to go here, guys, is just to mark this out. So I placed a center line here, and I've also placed our 11/16, our furthest limit, which will bring us right out to here. The very first thing I'm going to do is in this mark right here, which is at 7/16 up from the bottom, and I've got that measurement by scaling off the drawing here, we are going to drill a through 3/8 diameter hole. And now using a 1/2 inch circle template, we'll line up with our center line and that mark at 11/16, which is our upper limit of our holders here. And we will line things up, draw that top curve, and then we can just take it over and carefully cut it at the scroll saw. Now the procedure for the cylinder ends is pretty much the same. The only real difference is the layout and the size of the stock. Instead of 1/2 inch by 1/2 inch, it's 1/2 inch by 3/8. So the first thing I'm going to do is from one end of the board, I'm going to mark the length of our cylinder ends, and that would be at 5/8 of an inch. Now I've also placed a center line there, and 3/8 of an inch up from the bottom, we're going to place a mark there. That will be for our 3/16 diameter through hole. Now, what we want to do to mark these out, and this is where it's just a little bit different, is we'll take our 1/2 inch circle template, align it with our top mark, just like this, and we can draw our 1/2 inch circle. Now the bottoms of our cylinder ends are actually 3/8. So what we can do is right at the bottom, we're going to place a mark 1/16 of an inch in from each edge, and then we can draw a line from that mark up to the outer edge of the 1/2 inch circle that we just drew, just like that. So, first things first, holes are always first. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to cut this off square over at the table saw. We will leave this as an off cut so that we're not trying to hang on to this by the blade, give us a little bit of extra finger room. And then we're going to mark a center and we're going to drill our hole in the end just like we did over here. And then we will drill our center hole here and then we'll shape it at the scroll saw. And that is the 2 cylinder ends made. Now, we need the actual cross cylinder pins, and as well, we're going to need the upright cylinder pins. Now, those are just 3/16 diameter dowels that are cut to the length on the plan. So we don't really need any kind of instruction on that. But what we're going to do now is we're going to make the 2 upright cylinders, the outer housings, and the cross cylinder. Now these can be tricky because essentially you have to drill in through the end of a dowel and get it perfectly centered. So for me, I have a pen blank drilling jig that I use for this to hold my dowels completely upright. And I'm going to tell you something here that, you know, you can take it however you like. Don't think that you're going to pound these things off and get them perfect every time. I usually cut multiple pieces, multiple blanks, and out of every 3 I drill, I'm probably happy with about 1. So there is quite a bit of waste with doing these, but that's only because I like to have them perfectly centered. I like them to look exactly right. So take your time. It's going to be frustrating. It's hard to get it perfect. But what I will tell you though is you need to drill slowly. The amount of deflection on a 3/16 diameter drill bit drilling down through the end grain of a dowel is phenomenal. It is not uncommon for these drill bits to blow out the side of your dowel. So just take it nice and slow. Clear the hole out as much as you can. So with that, that's the best advice I can give you on drilling these outer housings of the upright cylinder and the outer housing of the cross cylinder. Just take your time, guys. Do your best with it, and I'll see you on the other side. There you go. There is one done. I think I said it was a 3/16 diameter hole that you're drilling through this. I checked the plans again. It's actually 7/32, a very loose fitting cylinder. But I guess that's just the nature of this model. So get your other 2 parts drilled out and then we can move on from there. Okay, and there is our 3 cylinders drilled out. So I started cutting the cross cylinder pin and the other pins to make up the other 2 cylinders. And then I kind of found another discrepancy. So here we have our cylinder holders, make 2, 1, 2, there we go. We have our cylinder end, make 2, 1, 2. Okay, we got that. But if we go to our exploded view, which is way back here on sheet 3, and we have a look at this exploded view, what do we see here? We see 1 cylinder end. There's 1 cylinder end, 2, 3. There's 1 for each of the upright cylinders, and there's 1 for the cross cylinder. So this information right here that tells us that we need to make 2 cylinder ends, do yourself a favor, cross that out and make it 3. Because you're going to need the 3rd one. I've gone through the plans. I don't see a 3rd one anywhere else listed. So no big deal. You know how to do it. Make yourself a 3rd one. And then we can put these cylinders together and maybe do a dry fit at that point. Well, I am absolutely no stranger to some of the frustrations that can come with these plans. And with Toys and Joys, it can be plagued by missing measurements, missing parts, things like we've seen earlier with missing holes in axles, that sort of thing. And I have to say that the dry fit of this whole assembly here for our road grader blade, it's been frustrating. And part of it is the changing in terminologies. I mean, if we look here, we have a 3/16 inch dowel pin. Dowel pin 1, 5/8 of an inch long. I get that. Okay, dowel pin 2, 9/16 of an inch long. I get it. Here we want to make 4 of these. How many of these do we want to make? No idea. Cross cylinder. How many of these to make? Turns out you only need 1. But the frustration comes in here, or it can come in, starting with this one, dowel pin 1. If we look at the exploded view, we see pin A, and then we see this one note, 3/16 dowel pin 1, marked A. Why on earth would you suddenly change your terminology from dowel pin 1 and suddenly start calling them A and have the person paying for your plans search for what this is supposed to be? So I'll save you some frustration. If you see things that are marked A here on the plans, it really is the dowel pin 1. So there you go, just to let you know, pay attention to that. Also here, lock pin D18. Well, 1/8 is Toys and Joy's funky method of saying it's a 1/8 dowel, the same as these pins here, the 3/16 are AC 316, that's 3/16, something to keep in mind. But lock pin D18, it doesn't exist. It doesn't exist anywhere on the plans except for page 1 that tells you you need a 1/8 inch dowel 2 inches long. Well, this is not 2 inches long. So when you go to put together this entire lower bar and this pivot block, you're going to need that 1/8 dowel. Don't look for it on the plans. You're not going to find it. But eventually you'll figure it out, that you'll have an assembly that looks something like this. Now, I haven't glued any of this together yet because even the way that it glues together is a little on the frustrating side, because there's nothing that tells you what to glue. And if you glue the wrong part, your blade isn't going to pivot. It's not going to be adjustable up at the top. So you really want to be careful here what you glue in. So let's head over to the bench, and we will start off with getting some of this glued together and getting our main bracket glued onto the main arm of our road grader. Well, we're going to start off by installing the upper cylinder mount, and that is shown here on drawing 4. You can see here our upper frame, and it shows the exact location. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to lay my frame on here. I have removed temporarily our front steering column, and we're just going to line this up with the pattern just carefully here. And once we're happy with the alignment, I'm going to just reach down here, and using the plans as a guide, I am going to carefully place marks just like that as to where this piece goes, our upper cylinder mount. And that would be this piece. So what we're going to do now is at those marks, we're going to place our upper cylinder mark exactly where it goes. We're going to glue it in place. And most importantly here, we are going to use a square and ensure that this thing is square to our beam all the way around. We'll clamp it and let it dry in place. Now on the drawings, there is really no clear indication where the lower cylinder mount will get mounted to the upper platform disc. But if you look on sheet 9, you will get a bit of an indication, both in the detail there that it says is from sheet 2 and in the drawing of the upper top right corner. It shows that this bar here gets mounted pretty much right after this last adjustment pin for the blade. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give myself about 1/16 of an inch between the pin and this upper cylinder mount, and we are going to glue this to our disc. I'm going to have both my pins in place here just to make sure that both I'm allowing for enough room to get this pin in and out, and as well that I have alignment on this one. You just want to be careful that you don't glue that pin in. Because we're going to have to take it out and glue it later into the lower disc. So for now, we can get this glued in place and clamped and let that set up to dry. Okay, while we're waiting for those to dry, we can glue in our upper cylinder holders here, right at the top. Now, one thing, again, you want to be careful of is don't glue them tight to this frame. They need to rotate, they need to spin so that they have some adjustment. That way when the blades adjust at the bottom, these will rotate and allow those cylinders to work. So you want to get these glued into place using your little pins that you made with, I don't know, dowel 1 or dowel A, whichever you want to call it. But we'll get those glued in place and let them dry up as well. Well, we're now going to glue our lower bar in place, and on your platform here, we are going to glue this in place centered on the back end, on the opposite side of our adjustment holes, centered on our holder here, and just like that. And we will glue this in place, clamp it, and let that dry up. Well, we can now install our pivot block, and I have our main arm here upside down. It will get installed right here, flush with both sides and flush with the bottom, just like this. So we can, just like our other pieces, glue this in place and let it set up. Well, what we're going to do now is this one pin that goes with this piece here, I'm just going to place it in place, and I'm going to dry fit in that 1/8 inch retaining pin. I don't want to glue that in just yet, just in case I need to remove the assembly. But what I am going to do is, everything looks good with this steering column, so I'm going to sit it in place and I will glue our pin in. You just want to make sure, just put a little dab of glue on the inside here in that stopped hole, and then push your pin all the way through to allow it to glue in place. That way you're not accidentally gluing this where you don't want it. The other option is to place glue around the shoulder of your pin and glue it to the front end here of your arm so that you're not gluing your steering column in place. Either way, get your steering column placed in there and we can move on. Well, we can now take our blade assembly, attach it to this front rod, it just slides in here, and from there we can attach our upper pistons, and they will just slide into our holders, and then we can glue these pins into our bottom retainers here, just loosely. You still want that movement. You want to have it so that they can rotate and swivel. You'll do the same thing on the opposite side. There you go, just like that. Now on the back side, what we can do is we can place this piston in here. Whether or not you glue it is up to you, but I would not glue the top, as this is your adjustments across the top. You want to have them so that you can pull the pin and shift it. But the bottom one, I mean, if you want to, you could glue it in, but it's not necessary. They're tight enough fitting that it'll hold there on their own. And that basically is your blade assembly, and it just kind of floats there and does its own thing as it switches and changes in the grade of the road. Cool, huh? Well, before we go on, I just want to install the last of the pieces that we've made, or pretty much the last of the pieces, and that will be these rear wheel holders. So I've made some 1/4-inch axle pins, and like I said, when it is not a through axle, I prefer a 1/4-inch hole, 1/4-inch axle pin, and a larger hole in either the wheel or whatever it is that the wheel is mounting to, in this case this axle. I have also punched out some of these little plastic washers from old margarine tubs and that sort of thing. You've seen me do it here on the show before, and we're just going to slide one of those right onto there. It'll go a long way to helping this be movable, and then we're just going to glue these in place just like that. And that for now will be done. We'll let those dry, and now we can move on. And unfortunately, once again, that's all the time that we have for this week, guys. We've made some great progress, maybe not so much in actually making a lot of pieces, but we've made some great progress in getting some of the assembly done, which is half the battle right there. Now, it can be confusing getting the assembly done, and this one doesn't make it any easier by making you have to reference 5 and 6 drawings kind of thing to be able to get the picture in your mind of what it is that you're trying to assemble. But at least the reference points are there, so you can pick and choose. Now for me, I'm very lucky that I have a background through my regular job in blueprint reading. So I'm very used to jumping back and forth between plans and measurements and cross-referencing and detail drawings and all that other stuff. So for me, it just comes second nature. But for some of you out there, you may have had a few problems with the assembly, and I hope that today's video showing you kind of how it goes together and ways that you can read it by seeing those dowels that are suddenly listed as A as opposed to 1, etc., etc. Hopefully, you'll be able to take the information in this video and apply it to your plans and be able to have a little less frustrating assembly of this stuff and have a little more fun with it instead of trying to figure it all out. If you haven't already, please consider liking and subscribing to the channel. You click the bell and then you're not going to miss the notifications of future episodes of the show. Guys, I want to thank you so much for tuning in today. I hope you've enjoyed the content. I hope you found this useful. I honestly hope that you are following along at home and that you're being able to apply what I show you here to your own model and your own project. And more importantly, guys, I hope you're going to join me again next week when I bring you yet another woodworking video.